Hey there, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of The Hard Truth Inside the Football Industry podcast with me, Philip Ideson, and Darragh MacAnthony, chairman and co-owner, and I'm going to say this slowly this time, of English Championship side, Peterborough United. We got a lot of good reaction from the show last week with Adrian. It was nice to see everyone kind of really, the comments that we got and the feedback that we got, and it was just a really good episode.
That was fabulous, and really appreciative of Aid to do that, because I know he doesn't do it. And I hate asking people for anything. Do you know what I mean? And reaching out to him, I almost felt guilty doing it, because you don't want to put people in an uncomfortable position. I'm one of those. I get people hit me 5 times a week to do college dissertations. You see the requests that come in, and at one point I do them all. I can't. I've got the energy just saps from me. You know what I mean? And particularly now, I haven't got the energy to do even our podcast. I'm in hell at the moment. You know what I mean? So I'm just fried. But very, very. It was really, really classy of him to do that last week, and he's one of the best in his profession. So again, appreciative for his time. It was brilliant from obviously Steve Evans the week before, and they were 2 of our most popular episodes in the last 4 months. So, we have to try and do the guest spin, because obviously our voices aren't enough, Philip, to get the new viewers. So what we need to do, we definitely need to keep evolving, and more people on the better. So that's for me to work on. It's just so much else on my plate, but we shall get at it.
So let's talk about the weekend. So a 3-0 defeat at West Brom, one that it was kind of the last 10-minute capitulation by the looks of it from a scores perspective, but the stats didn't look great leading up to then.
Yeah, I mean, if you showed our players a table, if it was a 75-minute game season, we'd probably be like 12th or something. Do you know what I mean? In the tables. So we have a real. Some would say it's conditioning. Some would say it's mental. It's concentration. I at this fucking stage, I don't know. I don't think it's a conditioning thing. But you look at statistics and go, well, you're one of the worst in the country for goals after the 75th minute. Again, some of our wins have come in injury time. So it's one of concentration. Look, here's how Saturday was a free hit. And I knew the game plan going in. And we knew, they're the best pressing team in the league. We're playing at their place. And it was a case of dig in for 75 minutes and then bring pace on and hit them. And, they weren't hurting us. Ronnie Edwards was exceptional in the first half, and then he got battered with concussion and went off. And it was never going to be an offensive game from us. It was never going to be, and I hate saying that, but when you have a game plan like that, I mean, the gaffer speaking on Saturday night, when you have a game plan like that, you have to get to 0-0.
Yeah.
Because if you lose like we lost, it's just horrible. It's horrible. Yeah. Then it's like, well, the statistics, the possession, the this, the that, whatever. Well, up to 75 minutes, they hadn't laid a glove on us, really. The new goalie really didn't have to make any saves. And, Ronnie's gone off. Jono, obviously, people have had a dig at him over the weekend, but he was our best defender on set pieces and corners. He must have cleared 3 corners, and he comes off because, he can't do the 90 or whatever changes were made. We've gone with Murray. We've gone with a bit of pace to maybe try and nick the game. And we can see it from corner. And it's just a kick in the bollocks.
Yeah.
And again, then you fear for the fragility. Yeah, and I got to be careful what I say here, because, again, like Adrian said last week, my players probably listen, and I don't want any of them having temper tantrums over me, being a little bit critical, or whatever else. It was 2-0, 1-0, 2-0, and I left it 2-0 because I hate feeling like that where you feel you're not coming back. So look, we're at the stage now; it's now or never. There's no more of that on Saturday. What you saw, it's gung ho. I'd rather die trying, and so would the manager. And I know that's how he feels. And it's not a good place at the moment. I was saying to you before, he's just getting battered all weekend, and people digging out Johnson Clark Harris, and it's just out of order. Like regards that poor boy, because he fought like fuck on Saturday. Not much he can do. He's a target man. There's no crosses coming into him. There's nothing for him to
You
eat
look isolated when you're not getting the support, don't you? And it's easy to point fingers at you.
He's feeding on fresh air. So his job is basically make the defenders uncomfortable as much as he can. He's up against 2 of them or 3 of them. And then second to that, do your defensive work for us. And he did all of that. And then for people to, dig him out or talk about him being fat, he's in good condition. It's nonsense now. We've moved past that. He's fit. And, he he'll be big for us in this final run, and if we get our act together. So I didn't like that. So I dug out a fan who was like coming at him because it's just like, no, you're not doing that. You're not doing that at all. You're not picking a little clip that someone picked of him not winning a ball in the air against defenders and saying he was quitting or he wasn't conditioned. You're not doing that to my lads. You know what I mean? No, enough already. We're hurting. I get it. We're hurting. And we had 1,000 fans there. They were brilliant. And they're hurting. We're all hurting. But it goes toxic. And I don't need people telling me what to do. You know, if I see another message from someone saying, you need to do this now, you need to fire the manager, you need to do that. I don't need to do fuck. I don't work for anyone. Okay? That's the beauty when you're successful. I haven't worked for anyone since I was 19. So I don't take fucking orders from people. All right? Simple as. So enough for the you need to do whatever. Because I've had enough of that crap and the toxicity, and it just becomes, yeah, I'm not going to lie to you, just the last like 36 hours, just like, what the fuck? And I get it, you know, losing games brings out the crazies, it brings out nastiness, it brings out disappointment, it brings out everyone saying, I told you so, it brings out the experts. And I've always said, you know, listen, fine, look, if I'm not doing it like you want me to do it, buy the club, buy your own football club, show me how you can do it better. By all means, that's not me being arrogant, it's not me being flippant. You know, if you feel you can do a better job, step up. You know, I stepped up. I made it happen. I bought a football club. I'm a normal guy. Why can't you do the same? It's, you know, I didn't spend my 20s and 30s on social media or writing letters to people telling them how to do their jobs. You know, I spent 20s and 30s making loads of money so I could buy a football club. So, you know, I think people's time needs to be spent better. Then I got my usual fans, the hardcore lot that message you on Facebook and whatever else. And I feel for them more than anything else because they're checking in on me. They're making sure I'm okay. That's not their job to check in on me. Yeah, you know, and I want to give them something to smile about because they're dying inside as much as I am, you know, and there's quite a few of them. And I see them before the game. I saw a few of them outside West Brom as I was having a smoke before I went in. You know, and they've travelled up and, you know, they're having a day out. And they're just brilliant fans like that, you know. And there wasn't the ones that came up when I spoke before the game, not one criticism, not one, you should do this, you should do that, blah, 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 blah. It's like, my God almighty, I get it. I get it. We're not good. We're losing games.
Yeah, you're not blind to the fact of what's happening.
I feel it more than anyone else. Trust
Yeah.
me. I feel it. I want to be at home with my family. I want to be at home with my kids. You know, my daughter's having her first school dance. I'm missing a few days. I don't need this. You know, I get it. I'm sat on my own in a house in the UK after we lose like that. I feel it. Trust me. If people want to punish me or want me to feel like shit, I feel like shit. That's how I feel at the moment. Trust me, more than anyone knows. So I don't need people telling me I should do this and I should do that. I know already. I know I'm failing. I know there's shortcomings at the club. I know all these facts. But don't think I'm not trying to do my best, working my ass off. I am. I spent every day last week in Peterborough. You know what I mean? I am trying. And then trying to do deals in this window. You've no idea. Someone says, go get, was it Force from Brentford? Did it. Yeah, no problem. You know, 17 grand a week and £1 million if we stay up, or £1 million or whatever. By the way, promotion teams have been told are probably going to take him on that and he'll want to go there and it'll be £1 million if those clubs go up and they'll do it.
Yeah.
Great, wonderful. No problem. What can I do? You know, I was chasing a boy at a Premier League club for like 2.5 months, 3 months, in case Dembele left. And the manager said, look, he's not going out on loan, not going out on loan. Then they signed a big player from Europe on loan. And my manager contacted their manager and said, look, you know, and he's like, no, we're not letting him out on loan. I wake up today and he's on loan at another championship club. And it's not about money. You know, the boy wasn't on that much money. He's like an under 21, a very, very talented player. But it's like, fuck, you know, I said to Bass, you know, today I was speaking, you know, Jesus, like trying to do deals with some of these clubs and it's like pulling teeth. It's really, really difficult. But look, no one does you favors in this industry unless you're really good pals or whatever else. But rarely do you get any favors. It's frustrating, you know, and it's like you're inquiring for players and you don't even get a call back. They just go and do deals elsewhere. And that's really bizarre. So, yeah, I'm not going to lie to you. It's tough. It's tough going. You know, to try and do deals, to try and find the right players, clubs' expectations. Yeah, really, really, really difficult. Monday being today, fucking really difficult day. And that's exasperated then by your team, getting beaten heavily. So that doesn't help either. So, but look, nobody died. I'm not asking for violins, and I'm not asking for people to feel sorry for me. I'm just, as usual, explaining the
The
circumstances,
realities behind the scenes.
the realities, the circumstances.
Yeah.
And it's like, we had another player who was desperate to come to us. And now 3 weeks later, it's like, nah, I'm going to wait till the summer. Because they don't want to be in a fight. They don't want to be in a battle. They don't want it. So, okay, I don't want them. I'd rather play 17-year-olds, from our youth team.
Yeah.
Because they put up more of a fight than some of these fucking cowards who are just, I'm not talking about current players who we're looking at bringing in maybe. They're fucking cowards because they're thinking, they're down already as a relegation.
Struggle on my CV.
Yeah, I'm not putting that in my CV. Well, fuck off, coward.
Yeah.
That's fine. But I haven't got cowards at my club. People like Clark Harris. I mean, if you trust him to get you promoted in the 96th minute with a final kick, trust him to work his nuts off to try and keep us in the league. Don't turn on him. It's all right. You can criticize players. You can be angry. You can be disappointed. But, don't turn on them in that way. Because that's just that's not right. And I said, you turn on me, fine. But leave some of those lads alone. Do you know what I mean? It's not on.
So how do you approach, you get these knockbacks in the transfer market, and you're working 24/7 right now to try and bring in, where you've identified some gaps, try to strengthen the team. You get these knockbacks, how do you keep on, where do you go? Where's the well of, okay, these are kind of the players, and if nothing happens there, we're going to go there, or kind of what does that talent identification look like, if you will, to keep going back and finding okay, we got bad news here, we're going to go there.
It's a lot of hard work, Phil. And it's based on months and months of scouting, of analysis, of meetings, and you have your list, and you're going, option A, B, C, or option 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're now down to 3 and 4, and we're getting shirked off by them. So then you've got fucking, plan B, complete plan B, which is basically not sure in this league for that player, but do you take a chance? Do you not take a chance? It's fucking Apple song. So you're at that point. So, or you get to the point where you go, no, we have to go with what we've got. We have to go with what we've got, and it's difficult because it's getting to that point. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna have to trust who we have. They put us in the situation. They're either going to dig us out of it or they won't. So it's people are just like, sign him. Oh, there's a player. Did it. This. No, it doesn't work like that. This isn't fantasy. This isn't fantasy land. This isn't, that's not how it works. So yeah, it's difficult, but I'll keep fighting. We've got 7 days left. I'm staying here on purpose to try and maybe get 1 or 2 more in. But if we don't, we don't. There's, it's not through lack of trying and, working really hard on it. So anyway, enough about Peterborough. We're at the stage now where we have a big game tomorrow night. And, I'm not saying it's do or die, but it's do or die.
Well, when you look at that fixture list for February, I mean, your next 3 games are what? Birmingham, Sheffield United, and then you got the Cup against QPR. February are those, the 6 pointers, and they're coming thick and fast at you.
We've exhausted people's patience with what happened on Saturday, so we can't do that anymore. So we have to. It's all or nothing now. Okay, it's all or nothing. So be it. So we're at the poker table now, and it's like, trying to chip away, but now it's all in. Everything's got to go on the table.
Mm-hmm.
So and we got to play our best hand. And I'm helpless on the sideline. There's nothing I can do.
Which is a horrible place to be, to feel like there's only so much you can do and influence. But
yes,
you're watching just like everybody else.
I am, and firing my manager is not going to happen, people. For the ones who are asking for it, and look, it's not the majority, it's the usual after you lose a bad game, or you do the right thing, it's time. But I'm not firing the manager. I've said that. If the manager goes, I go. I'm standing by that. And, and that's not me being naive. I just, you bring in tomorrow, you bring in Neil Warnock in tomorrow, you might win 2 games. And then it's, is that, an academy-based club, a youth-based club? Is that, with all due respect, legend of a manager, if you could afford it? Is that solving the problem? It's like, no, you know what I mean? We have a system, we have a formula, we have a philosophy, and we're having a really, really bad patch, after a really good couple of years, testing years, but good years. So, no, and Jason and Randy, my partners, feel the same. So stop people asking me to do that. That's not going to happen. So enough about posh. Let's talk football in general. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because we're going to have Ryan on the show a little bit later. We're going to talk Bradford later in the show.
Yeah.
I wanted, before we go into any results or anything, troubling times over the last week at Derby, and
Oof.
all the backwards and forwards, and the administrator saying one thing and the EFL saying another thing, and you have Middlesbrough involved saying things and Wycombe involved saying things. We've got a lot of questions that have come into the pod from concerned Derby fans about that, and I just wondered,
Yeah.
kind of as a outsider, but obviously knowing how the wheels turn inside the industry, what's your making of what's going on there at the moment? Is it charades, or is it have they got something more to worry about?
I've had a lot of Derby fans say you need to comment on all these lawsuits. And look, I'm not. I've had so much on my plate. I haven't studied it myself. I haven't read it. The Middlesbrough thing. I'm not. Yeah. They missed out on the playoffs because of Derby getting in from overspending, so they feel there's a compensation thing there. Wycombe obviously last year felt Derby cheated the rules that cost Wycombe their spot in the championship. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know all the legalities, but both of those clubs must have had sound legal advice that they've got cases to win if they are pursuing legal action. Because that's, I'd have spent money on lawyers going, look, have we got a case or, whatever.
Yeah.
Do you blame them for trying? No, I don't think you do, because that's just the world we live in. Everyone, I've met anyone who doesn't like, has been sued or doesn't like to sue somebody. What I'd say is, and I know the Derby fans are upset because they feel, well, Middlesbrough and Wycombe are going to put us into liquidation. And I pray that doesn't happen, and I don't think it will happen. My question would be, if Derby can't sell it because of these pending possible lawsuits or whatever else from these two clubs, why hasn't the administrator sat with either of those clubs and tried to do a deal?
Right.
And said, look, here's the deal we're going to do. And it only kicks in when we find a new owner. So I don't know. I don't know what Wycombe's claim is. I don't know the finances involved. Is it 6 million? Is Middlesbrough asking for 50 million? Right. That's pie in the sky, because Middlesbrough, you take a lot to convince a judge, I don't know if there's a jury involved or whatever, that they would get into the playoffs, then win the playoffs. Do you know what I mean? So I'm not sure that would have merit to stand up. And I'm not trying to piss Middlesbrough fans off, but I just don't think that has merit. So it's uncharted territory. But what you would do if you're the administrator, you would sit with both clubs and go, look, guys, until we bring someone in, all of this is like pie in the sky. But listen, what can we do? What are you thinking? Mm-hmm. Now, Wycombe turn around and say, well, we want 2 million quid. Okay, fine. We'll give you $1.5 million, but it's payable over 3 years. It doesn't start, we get a new owner. Middlesbrough say we want 10 million. You try and do deals. If that's your roadblock to stopping you getting in somebody wealthy that can keep the club going and get back on its feet. Because if you're a prospective buyer of Derby, you want to know warts and all. What are you walking into? And if they say, well, there's 50 million to the taxman, there's 50 million out to the previous owner, there's this, that, whatever else, but we've done deals where we wiped it down to 40 million, wipes all of that out, bang. However, there are these two lawsuits pending that we haven't got agreements on. We don't know if it's going to be 10 million or 50 on top. Well, no one's going to buy the club under that circumstance. So the other thing I'd do is, if I was a potential buyer, put the administrator to the side, maybe I'd go and approach those clubs and say, hey guys, can we do a deal?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or whatever else. So I don't know. I mean, it's a terrific football club. Whoever gets it is getting a deal. And a proper, I would imagine if it goes to the 9th to 12th hour, Mike Ashley ropes in, because Ashley is notorious for doing deals like that, and he's got the money.
Yeah.
And what a club that would be for him. It's a really, really puzzling situation when you look at everything. And I think I saw something written today on Twitter that there could be some positive signs. So, the liquidation talk is abated, which is great news, because you don't want to see a club like Derby get liquidated. But the other problem you've got as a new owner is, the previous guy still owns the fucking stadium, and he's taken that out of the mix. And I don't know about the training ground. So, you really, I guess the people bidding know everything. I guess, the figures are transparent in a data room once you show proof of funds. But the thing that's not transparent is what are you going to owe the two clubs who are potentially suing you? And it's easy. Look, I know everyone wants to pile on Middlesbrough and pile on Wycombe, and then they feel their cases have merit for whatever reason. But again, I'm pretty sure those owners would do a deal with a new owner, and maybe even do the deal with the administrator. Mm-hmm. They feel a sense of injustice. Okay, I felt like that 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I had really good sound legal advice from somebody who's now in the FA. You know, my lawyer, who's represented me for years, who said we had a serious legal case to get an injunction against the vote, you know, and whatever else. And we could have done a class action with all the other clubs. And I didn't do it in the end. And it wasn't about the legal fees. It was just like I was exhausted by it. And I thought, no, I'm not going to be the guy who holds up
Right.
the playoffs, holds up football, you know, trying to go to the high court during COVID. I'm like, no, you know, at the end of the day, it's an injustice. We'll fight this next year on the pitch, which we did. And I moved on. But I did. I had sound legal advice. I've still got it in my Dropbox that we had a cast iron case to stop all of that palaver.
You know, I think for me, that's where the bad taste comes, is that, you know, whether you have a legal case or not, whether Middlesbrough or Wycombe feel that they have a legal case or not, it almost feels like it's the unwritten rules of, I mean, football is, you kind of let that play out on the pitch or with the EFL or with the FA, even if you don't necessarily like the decisions, because couldn't everybody have a case against any team that's ever gone into administration? Because by default, they've gone into administration because they spent more money than they had. And so, you know, in Steve Gibson's language in his statement, they cheated. So anytime anyone goes into admin, everyone else has got a case that they didn't get something that perhaps they feel like they deserved.
Yeah, 100%. You know, I agree with what you're saying. The whole thing's a shit show, and it doesn't reflect well on us and or the EFL. And again, it's a case of, you know, we've got to put things in place. This nonsense doesn't happen. That
Mm-hmm.
you've got these poor fans. I had loads of Derby fans. You know, a few of them have taken it upon themselves to try and contact Gibson at Middlesbrough, the Wycombe owner, and you know, and you feel for them. These people don't work for the club. This is the club they support.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, win, lose or draw, they just want their club in existence, and they are terrified it's going to go into liquidation. That is not fair to a fan base of what 30, 40,000 that go to games. How many other thousands of people that live around the area? It's just a complete shit show, and for it to happen, for it to allow it to be happened, it doesn't look bad. It doesn't look good on us. It doesn't look good on the EFL, and we have to stop this now. This has to be the flag in the sand. You've seen what happened with Bury. You've seen what happened with other clubs. Wigan, God love them, they're flying high now in League One. Bolton are on their way back. But, you know, these are iconic big clubs, and Derby's, if not the biggest out of all of them. So if we don't learn a lesson from this, we've learned nothing, and it'll just be continuous shit shows down the line.
Yeah, so I want to ask a little bit. I saw some news just before we jumped on the pod around COVID postponements, and the Premier League now starting to think about putting some more stringent rules in place.
Hey!
Yeah, a little bit too late, you know, one could argue, but I guess baby steps. You know, shouldn't we be doing this from the start?
Yeah, I mean, this whole thing about COVID and, you know, last year when we had it, I said it before, there were no vaccines. So I could, you know, they were just being rolled out. So I understood why you panicked if there was a breakout and you didn't want like older relatives infected during Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
But the piss taking that's gone on this year is just a fucking liberty, taking the fucking piss. And we allowed that because coming out and saying, well, as long as you have X amount of, it suddenly became not about COVID. It was about, well, actually loads of our players are injured. So we can't forget COVID, take COVID out of it. If Peterborough United tomorrow night had 18 injuries and whatever else, we would be expected to field a youth team.
Right.
We would be expected to field, you know, a bunch of 11 and 12-year-olds just to get the game on. There was no way the game would be allowed off. And if we did take it off, it'd be forfeited. It would be a 3-0 win. Do you know what I mean? So I'm glad they're saying now, I think it's 4 positive tests. Otherwise, you're not calling the game off. But it's a little late now. Omicron has missed the UK. We've all fucking had it. I think we're at herd immunity now. I think the infections amongst footballers are dropping right off. We've got to stop testing now. We're testing every fucking day still, which is ridiculous. So it's move on time, you know, and obviously England's back to normal tomorrow without any restrictions. Plan A, you know, COVID's a thing of the past in regards to restrictions and life and sports. So yeah, just a little bit too late.
Is that daily testing still driven by the regulatory bodies, whether it's EFL, whether it's the government then?
Yeah, EFL. The only day we don't have to test is on match days. So we still have to test every other day, which is just fucking nonsense.
Okay.
Yeah, total nonsense.
And you're still paying for that as a club?
Fuck me. I believe, I don't know actually. It's a good question. I fucking hope not.
Mm-hmm. There's another big line item.
Yeah. Let me make a note here. It's like, Christ almighty. Oh, dearie me.
Well, I know that we're going to jump soon into the conversation with Ryan. So because we haven't had the chance to ask a few questions the last few weeks, I just thought I'd pick out one or two here. We got a question from Zach on email. Zach asked, I wanted to get Darragh's opinion on parent clubs that recall loan players and then loan them straight back out to other clubs. How does it work and why does it happen?
So it's the system. The way it's meant to work is, if I have a young player and I want him to go out and play 20 games in the conference, I would do that in August. And I'd put in there that we have the chance to recall him in January, with the idea that if he does really well in the conference, I'd want him in League Two from January. So what I wouldn't want to do, and I wouldn't do to another club, is take him from the conference and put him in another club in the conference. That's wrong for me. But if he's going up a level, loans are usually about player development, particularly if it's an under 25. Other loans can be about you want to sell the player, so you want him to go do well, and then you ping him back because you can sell him. We had that with Ryan Broom. We can recall him if we get an offer. They can match the offer. Now, for a younger player from the Premier League to come to us and then say he's yanked back in Jan and sent to a bigger club in the same league, I think that's wrong. At the end of the day, he's playing in the same league, so his development's still the same.
How much do you watch players that are out on loan?
Yeah, we've got people at the club, particularly under 23s, 18s, who go and watch our loan players. When a chance arises, we always go watch them. So it's important to see that your players are developing. We also get reports from the clubs we loan them to. So we've got a couple of youngsters in the 23s that we love to get out to the second half of the season. Go get 20 games, because we need to ask the question: if the worst case happens and we're back, where, can they still play in that league next year? You know what I mean? So it's important now to see some progress, because we feel they're really good young players, but you never really know until they go out and play actual men's football. 23 games are great, cup games are great, but to actually go and be involved in a promotion campaign or a relegation campaign and in the heart of the battle, that's key. Mm-hmm. So, there you go.
And how often would you, or do you even contemplate recalling a player because it's not progressed the way that you wanted? Maybe because the club's not playing him, it's just not worked for him.
A lot. We had a player that was at Wrexham a couple of years ago, Kyle Barker. Indeed, Keatsy was our ex-player, and we thought he'd play, and he hardly ever fucking played, so we recalled him. So it's no good for an 18 or 19-year-old of ours to sit in a bench 4 leagues below us.
Right.
He needs to play. So we'll often say to the clubs, we're not really interested in his wages being paid. He needs to play. So that's where a lot of the time you hear these deals where they have to pay full wages or more than the wages if he doesn't play.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of bigger
clubs. It's like there's disincentive for him not to play.
Correct. The whole idea is development. Go play.
And then we have another one that we got a few weeks ago that I just wanted to ask, and it's from Harvey. Harvey said, I'm contacting you about wondering if Darragh had any advice for getting involved in becoming like a player liaison officer within a football club, kind of that kind of role. And just wondered, how do folks find themselves in those roles?
I think when you look to do a role at the club, do you know anyone around the club? Do you know friends of people around the club? It's a lot of who you know. You'll advertise for jobs. Our academy went up to Cat 2. We had to get a lot of new employees on board. So there's a lot of posts put out about jobs. It's like everything else, tell Harvey, you got to get your CV together. You got to put in the CV and, hopefully someone reads it, likes it and gets you in for an interview. There's no magic answer to this.
Right.
It is what it is.
All right. Well, let's leave our conversation there. We'll be back in part 2 with Ryan Sparks, CEO of Bradford City.
Look forward to it.
So hi there, everybody. Welcome back to part 2 of this week's Hard Truth podcast. We're joined by Ryan Sparks, CEO of Bradford City. Welcome back to the pod, Ryan.
No, thanks for having me, guys.
I think it was beginning of the season we last chatted. Maybe it was the end of last on the podcast. How would you evaluate the season so far at Bradford?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't amassed the amount of points that we'd if you like planned or targeted to take at this point. We've made a pretty good start to 2022. We know what we need to bag in terms of points going into the, shall we say, latter stages. We know that we're going to need good form to carry us where we'd like to get to. If we continue in the vein that we're in, points taken from the games we've had, we will probably get there. That's a tall order. We've got to make sure we do it. The Derek and the players know exactly what they want to achieve. So it hasn't been how I would have hoped. If you like, I knew we had internal targets of where we wanted to be in the league at a certain point. We weren't far from that actually, but we've still got to close 5 or 6 points to make the playoffs as things stand just now. And this is a division, however, of opportunity, and I do feel that if we can maintain the PPG that we've got in 2022, although albeit on 4 matches, there's no reason we can't do what we want to do.
How far are you from automatic, Ryan?
I think it's 10 points, something like that.
That's nothing, is it, with 20 odd games left. I mean, now's the time for the afterburners to go on, isn't it?
Yeah, and look, we've got quite a few clubs, us included, they've got game in hands on other clubs, and it needs to just settle out so we can see. I think once we get this week and next couple out of the way, then everybody sort of catches up on their, for want of a better phrase, COVID games that got parked up, and after that it will be very much a shootout, and we need to make sure we're in that mixer. We're not far off it in some terms. There's an inconsistency about the way we're performing on the field at the moment, which leads to a bit of frustration. But I'd much rather be frustrated at this end of the table than the other end, and I'm pretty confident that with the change we're making this window, when them guys start to gel, I'm actually quite excited about where we can get to. We're a positive organisation. We're not going to sit there and you can't change what's gone. Ultimately, we've actually only lost 6 games this season. We've only won 7. That's the problem. We've drawn 12. It is a case of flicking a handful of them draws the other way, and it's a completely different outlook, I guess, from a supporter's perspective. But internally, when you're talking about your performance, you know how close you are in that regard. If you're miles away, it's very different.
Yeah, how's the general feeling around the club at the moment? Like you mentioned that you try to keep the positivity. Is the confidence going into the back half of the season that you pretty much have what you need, and that everyone's looking forward?
Oh, 100%. We've tried to make huge steps on and off the field in the last sort of 15 months since I took over. I made it pretty clear from the start where I think we needed to get to as an organisation. We're not there yet, but the position of the business is much different to the one back in November 2020. But in terms of where we think we are inside the club, we're probably all quite frustrated as well because we want to kick on. But so do the players and so do the manager. It's no different. Every club's the same. You don't go in there anytime looking to lose games. You know what I mean? And I think the story of our 2022 so far, just this side of the new year, is we seem to be taking one ginormous leap forward and then just stuttering backwards half a step. I don't think it's a case of 1 forward, 2 back. It's just it might be 1 for 1. But like I say, there's a lot of games that come thick and fast. This time tomorrow, if we can get to Walsall and get a result, we've closed the gap. You know what I mean? And we're level then with the other teams around us in terms of matches played, and we're going into a big home game against Crawley where anything could happen.
How did you? We're not going to get into all the stuff that happened with the cryptocurrency firm and all that stuff, but how did you, as a CEO, and the manager, handle all of that while it was blown up for like a couple of weeks?
Well, I mean, the honest truth is it's difficult. I were a CEO by 29 and nearly an NFT by 30. So, I thought,
hey, thank fuck they didn't pay an actual cryptocurrency. Have you seen the value of that fucker at the moment?
So I think it's difficult. These are sides of the fence that people don't always see. When I was aware of things, I was honest with the manager very quickly because Derrick's someone I brought to Bradford, and we've got a real bond of trust there. And if I stick with the manager and the players through thick and thin, I think you have to. And I made everybody aware at the club who needed to know, quite honestly, that this could happen, and Derrick as well. And both myself and Derrick in other lives have been involved in takeovers and potential takeovers and things that nearly did and nearly didn't. So it's not new to me. It was distracting, I can't lie to you, because at the end of the day, I've got a focus on a plan and a vision that's on the table. And I can assure you one thing I would say is that I believe that vision would have been slightly different. Whether or not I would have still been a part of that vision that's maybe an answer I'll never know. But it's one of them where you've got to crack on. I've got to be professional. I get paid to run this football club, and until I'm told otherwise, I would continue to do it. But what happened or didn't, if you like, and it was very important that I did take that approach, because when things didn't transpire, it wasn't a change of direction. It was simply just continue on the path that we set. But it's not easy. I won't lie to you. On a personal level, away from all this, you're looking at your own career and things like that, and what might happen, and you're asking yourself questions. And I've had opportunities to look at other options myself in the last 12 months from a work point of view. And I stuck with this football club because I believe in it and I want to win at this football club. It's my hometown club. And there were moments where I had to ask myself questions, what happens if I don't have a job? And I have to prepare for myself for that. They're things completely outside of the business. It's just on a personal level. But that's just one of the aspects of what happens. You don't know what's going to happen. It does create a bit of a
I mean, football's so strange. Grant McCann's just beaten two of the top teams in the championship, and I believe rumours out there that he's left Hull.
What?
Yeah, that's the rumour. I don't think anything's confirmed yet, but I've definitely seen that today. They're bringing in Shota Avaladze or something is the rumour to replace him.
Wow.
So that's
fair play to Grant. My word.
Yeah, that's the second shotgun firing for Grant with new owners, because my partners came in and we let Grant go. I think it was the day before they were announced. So he's had that happen to him twice. This is the game you're in. This is the industry. You know what you got to do?
Yeah.
You got to get yourself a new contract. You're the CEO, and you got to put in there a big payoff in case it happens. There you go. Solution.
I've got a couple of bitcoins there, maybe if I get. I just that is the nature of the beast. You're in volatile positions. You know that when you take the role, and you know that when you take the role on, if you want to sit in a different role inside the football club, they're all very important, but some of them you are less, shall we say, vulnerable in terms of a long-term future. And if I didn't want to do it, then I didn't have to step into it. So these are all things that I knew when I did it. And so does Derek. When Derek walks into a football club like this, it's an attractive business. We do well financially. We're well run. So you have to anticipate that one day you might have an ownership change or some interest in it being purchased. And that can lead to changes. And that's just natural.
There's a week left in this window. January is usually very tough. This is probably the toughest January ever. Football's in a recession. What are you looking to do pieces wise last week of the window?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's no hiding the fact that we've lost Liangol there to injury, so we're going to need some support in our front line. We've got 3 strikers who are fit on the books. We need another one. I think the manager's been pretty honest and open about that. And then you're just looking at other areas really where potentially we may need to strengthen and improve, and of course prepare for any potential departure and what that might mean. But right now, I don't see many departures on the horizon, really.
Phil, what does Bradford need?
What do we need?
Tell the CEO who the fuck you should find, what you should do, like every fucking fan does at football clubs.
Yeah, because it's that easy, right?
Yeah,
just pop onto Football Manager, buy a couple of strikers and a right back, and jobs are good. And
but what do they need, Phil? Well, in your opinion?
In my opinion, I mean, I think it's fair that we need somebody up front just to, with something a little bit different than what we've probably already got. We've invested a lot, I think, out wide and in forward players in attacking the box. So it's actually going to be interesting to see how that impacts, Jamie Walker, for example, we brought on loan. It's going to be really interesting to see how that impacts us from converting those chances. Probably I was interested to see a goalkeeper coming in today. So we signed Alex Bass, didn't we, from Portsmouth. Like, what's the thinking about having another keeper on the books?
Yeah, I mean, Alex, that was a deal that was pieced together not today, to say the least, probably last week. We felt it's an area that we needed to strengthen and improve. And Alex is ultimately a number one, really, in all but name at Portsmouth, and comes with a great reputation. Player, again, that we monitored for some time. So to get him, we're quite pleased. And obviously, it is an area where we perhaps we need to be better in. We've only really recruited in places where we think we've got gaps or lack of depth. Whether that will result in one of our goalkeepers leaving the football club remains to be seen. But it's not necessarily just a case of adding. We're trying to we're just trying to put the finishing touches to the squad, if you like, now that we think can help us achieve the goals.
How much of when you look at recruitment in a transfer window like this is geared towards short term? We know what we need because we're making a push for a goal this season. Obviously promotion being that goal this season. And how much is it with a longer term perspective?
Well, I don't know what Darragh's thoughts are. I've always thought, with loans, it's an interesting situation. If you take a player on loan, and I've seen many examples of this football club, you take them on loan at the start of the season, they tear it up, and then all that actually happens is you recall that player, their value goes up, they put a gun to your head sometimes, and you lose the player. Mm-hmm. Or you end up paying through the nose for the player. That happened here with 2 or 3 examples I can think of when we were in other situations. So the loan market was something we left in the summer. I think we've been quite successful in that in the January window. We've been able to pick off players that perhaps wouldn't usually play in League Two, to be diplomatic. And Jamie Walker strikes me as one who's come from the SPL. Jamie's an excellent player and someone that wouldn't usually step down to this level, but for a short term would like to. And what it also does is, there is some short term thinking in that you're trying to get to your end goal. And then that opens things up. We have got a lot of players off contracts at the end of the season, and there are some of those players that we've loaned that we may potentially look to continue with. Whether they will sign for us in League Two is another matter. And it's also about players buying into what we're trying to achieve. We're not just stockpiling players. There's no real holiday for a loan player, is there, in this position, because some of those players are out of contract. They've got a point to prove most of the time. And as a club, I think we've got a bit of a point to prove to ourselves. So it kind of fits in. But it doesn't mean that we won't sign and we're just going to do this every year. It's just the way this has worked this year, and I think we've made decent use of the loan market, and we've got good bang for our buck as a result.
Yeah, loans can be 2 things. Like a couple of years ago, we got Schmoddix on loan. We got Reece Brown on loan. I forget who else we brought in. Find 2 or 3 of them then the following summer. So sometimes it's a good platform. It's like a dating thing.
Yeah.
You date, see how each other are, see if you fuck really well together, if the chemistry's good, and hey ho, I'll put a ring on it in the summer. So if all parties can agree. So that can be what a loan is like. The other side of it is you think this is a really good player, you bring him in, and they're a bag of shit for 6 months, and you think, okay, thank fuck I never signed them and put them on a 2 or 3 year deal.
Yeah. I mean, I only ever take a loan deal to, usually the final game of the league season anyway. Some clubs will take loans from you till the end of June, which is always great for me and bad for them because you sat with the bill. And particularly, again, this doesn't apply to this squad, but in the past, it does leave a sour taste when you do that and that player's not performed or it's not worked out or the team's just generally not kicked on and you are left with massive bills that you're paying through gritted teeth.
100%. I mean, being in the Championship, some of the demands you get, you've got to pay to the 30th of June. So you're paying wages for 7 weeks past the finished playing. Secondary, we want 150 grand if you stay up. And we're like, for a full back, what's he going to do? Score 10 goals in 20 games? Some of the things, and you got to remember, you're accommodating them. There's no other industry in the world where if Ryan wasn't a good enough CEO at Bradford and he had to go and be a CEO in the 7th league and non-league or whatever else, to go and get that job, if he was, out on loan, he'd have to go find his own digs and pay his own way with a salary he earns. Football's the only fucking industry where they get the same salary and now you're paying for them to stay somewhere, usually a fucking hotel. It's the most bizarre thing. Do you know what I mean? And I've been moaning for years with the EFL about let's get rules in place for these loan situations.
I mean, you do right by the player, and we always try to make our players feel welcome, but there are hidden costs as well to loans that we're talking about: apartments, bills, sometimes vehicles, not always in our case, but it does happen. But you make sure the player feels welcome. It's very important to me that Jamie Walker feels like this is home. until whatever happens. But we've got claret seats just like Hearts, so I'm sure he. I think that we've done half of it.
Listen, I hear you. I mean, look, it's one of them things. Loans are 50-50 in my opinion. 50-50. 50-50 it goes well, 50-50 it's a waste of fucking money and a waste of time. And I hate being in a position where I'm doing loan deals. Absolutely despise it. I do. There's contempt on my face every time I approve a loan transaction. And you try and support a player, you put them in a hotel, you look after them, you make sure they're, the player welfare, all of that stuff. But a lot of them, these players, they'll fuck off 200 miles home on their day off. And then they'll drive back then and they're for training. What's the body like? They're going out and playing and they're meant to run 11, 12 clicks in a game. And they're doing all those things in between. There's so much to get frustrated.
And that is, again, I think it's different at different ends of the EFL, to be honest with you on that. I mean, what we've tried to do with the boys that have come in is be real clear and say, we want you to stay here. We'll do the apartment. We'll get you the places you want to live, but we want you to bed in. And I think, from what I'm talk to the lads that have come in, Jamie's got his kids coming down and things like that when they're not at school, and they're very much staying here, which is crucial because they need to fully immerse themselves in the culture, or it doesn't always work. If they become homesick or spending too many days back home, it's not really working.
No, it's not. And then you get sometimes the master clubs, I call them, the Premier League, why isn't he playing? What's going on here? What's going on there?
Yeah.
I listen, I probably sound really negative today, only because I'm irritated and fucked off with a few things in that loan market. But that's where we are, in football. And, hopefully you'll get, the bits you need, Ryan, by the end of the window.
Yes.
Going on a super run.
No
Phil, as a fan, you happy with everything so far, Phil? How was Saturday's game?
Saturday, it was another one of those games where you just felt like we had it to win and we just couldn't convert. A really, really strong start. Probably didn't follow through on that for the entire game, but it was one of those you walking away thinking, you know what, there was 3 points there for the taking. What I have to say about Saturday, and I know we sound like a broken record, the support is just fantastic. I mean, we're at Scotland. I think it was a 4,900 crowd, more than half were Bradford fans. And it's just incredible.
That's mad.
And for me, Saturday's the biggest frustration was, I wanted to see the away and go bonkers. You know what I mean? And that's what they're the moments you love at the end of the day. And it just didn't. We just couldn't get out of second gear on Saturday for whatever reason. Like I said to you, top of the chat, it felt like half a step back. And we things happen in the game, that. I understand because I can see what's trying to be done. Like we lose Elliot Watt 25 minutes in, our whole shape changes in midfield. The plan goes out the window. When the plan's almost coming back on course, we look good again. Angles through on goal, and the hamstring goes. These are moments that set you back, and we just didn't deal with that adversity as well as we did, for example, against Salford. Now they went down to 10 men, and that in itself brings adversity because you've got the centre half with 2 teeth missing. He plays on, he wins, he gets the winning goal, and we managed to go after Salford, who put 10 men, they put everyone they had behind the ball, and we still won the game. It's just weird how sometimes players react in different ways. But you just felt if we could have got 1 goal at Rochdale, it would have opened right up, and it just didn't. And what that does is that puts more pressure then on your next game. Because for me, if we win tomorrow night at Walsall, the Rochdale point's a good point. I think Rochdale are far better than 18th, 19th in League Two. They're a decent side, and if they'd have been on it in front of goal, they probably would have beaten us. So we've got to make sure that when we look back, that's a good point, and not what you've just said there, which is we've dropped 2. We've got to see it the other way, and that really is down to the lads, I'm afraid.
Let me ask you a serious question, Mike. What's a Forest Green done that Bradford can't?
Say that again, sorry.
What's Forest Green done that Bradford can't?
I think what I've seen at Forest Green over the years, I speak to Henry, the chief executive, quite a bit. They've run one way for a long time, in terms of their football department. Their culture at the club has been a developing culture, I think, for a number of years now. Now, they have fallen short several times. They've been in this position before, not quite this high, but they've been in this position before and actually not made the playoffs. That was 1920 season, I believe. They slipped out along with ourselves. And they've like last season, they lost the playoff semi-final. And I don't know how devastating that was for the guys down there. But what they've done then is they've put a manager in that they believe can adapt to that culture and I think continue with their method. They've also kept the core of a very, very good League Two squad together. The likes of Jamil Matt, they've developed it from there. They've not had mass turnover of players. They've not hit the manager reset button. They've hit it once in 5 years, and then they've put in something that will continue it rather than take it off course. And that is down to they've built it up over time. Let's not kid ourselves. They've not gone from the National League to League One and back. They have sustained. They've had, in my opinion, a sustained attack on League Two for a period that has been focused, and it's starting to bear fruit for them. It's no surprise, really. I think there are a couple of clubs like ourselves in this division just now where, we've set the marker where we want to go. Port Vale are very similar in that regard. Probably Leyton Orient too. We've set ourselves where we want to go. There's a certain culture at the club that they believe in, and we believe in ours. And it needs time to develop and progress. And ultimately it will lead to success, be it this season or be in the future.
Yeah, I was just wondering, obviously they've got a manager, young, good philosophy. They're very Liverpool in the way that their fullbacks create most of the goals in their team. Yeah, you look at Liverpool, Robertson, Trent Alexander-John. You look at Forest Green, and you basically got Cadden, and then you got the boy on the right side, Wilson. Is that his name?
They've got Aitchison. They've got a few. I mean, if you look at last year, they lost Jamil Matt with that really strange injury where he kind of burst his whole wrist open, and their season just seemed to collapse from there. And that's another point. They've been fortunate with their injuries. They've kept the best players on the field all the time. And every time you look at the Forest Green 11, they are naming Matt, Stevens, Aitchison, Cadden. And that makes a real difference. Now, that can look like an excuse, but when you've got a set team, that's who you are. It's an identity. And they've got a way of playing. When they came here, we stopped them. We probably should have beaten them. That did feel like 2 points dropped to me, Phil. And they are beatable, but what they've got in the minute is huge momentum and confidence as well. And but for me, it's Forest Green have had a sustained attack, I would say, on this division, and they've stuck to what they believe in. Yes, they've changed the manager, but generally speaking, they've stuck to what they believe in.
I think we've got 25 grand on Matt Stevens if they go up. So I'll take the promotion bonus.
It's an interesting kind of looking at some of the things that Forest Green are doing, and what you were talking about, Ryan, there brings an interesting question for me, which is how much about success, especially in League Two and perhaps in League One to some extent. So, Darragh, I'd love your perspective as well on this. How much of is it truly down to how much budget you've got, and how much is it around how you set up the club, the infrastructure, kind of momentum, and it's not necessarily the biggest, the ones that spend the most money on the wages that has the biggest impact.
Momentum's key. Like a lot of clubs, if somebody dominates League Two and wins the title by 10 points, 15 points, a lot of the time the momentum will lift them on, into a top 8, top 6 in League One. We've seen it before. I think Scunthorpe ran away with the league a few years ago, and then they pipped us. They were 6th in League One the following year, and then they obviously collapsed down the leagues after that. But momentum plays a key part. Can you keep all the players? And if you can keep the mass majority, we did it when we went back to back. We kept the nucleus. We didn't sell one asset. We got offered millions for some of our strikers, kept them, added to it, and went again. So that can be done. Do you know what I mean? But then again, you'll see other clubs that go up and struggle like fuck when they get up to League One. Swindon. I think Swindon won during COVID. They won the league, and then they went up to League One, and they were a bag of shit. So, again, it all depends. But how many players did they still have from when they went up? I think what Ryan's doing at Bradford is you got players on longer contracts. You got a good manager. You build a nucleus. If you go up, a club your size, the revenue you're going to get in League One, you sprinkle 3 or 4 additions, and you should be a force to be reckoned with in the top 10 in League One.
Yeah, and the reason kind of for some of the question is that oftentimes on the outside you look and say, well, the reason why we are not in top, why we're not in doing what Forest Green is doing, is because we need to invest more money. It's always the fans, like the perspective is it's always more money that's needed, and that's kind of what I'm trying to. It's not necessarily that doesn't equal success.
No, but I mean, this is what I'm talking about. I would argue we've got a bigger budget than Forest Green. In fact, I'd guarantee it. That's not the point. But Forest Green have had a lot of, you know what I mean? You know, I talk about culture quite a bit, and I think people think it's a buzzword. It's really not. If you set off in a direction, then you just keep left, right, speed bump, but you're going absolutely nowhere. You will end up on your Jack Jones pretty quick. You know, and it's, if you stop believing in what you're trying to achieve, you never get there anywhere. You know, at this club here, you know, and I'm happy to say it, I thought lacked a bit of overall direction for a long time. Since the day I kind of walked in the place, I've never really got it or what it was trying to do. So obviously, I always believe that once I got an opportunity, if I ever got an opportunity to run it, then or run any club for that matter, you would set a course that your staff, your players, your manager, your recruitment staff, your backroom staff, the guys that look after the pitch, look after the stadium, they all can kind of understand and relate to what we're trying to achieve here. And that's massive, you know, and for a club like, you know, when we talk about Forest Green, there's other clubs that are great examples where they've just got the shit together and they know exactly what they're trying to achieve and they're cracking on with it. And it's not about money. I mean, look at Wycombe, another example where Wycombe have, yes, they come out of the Championship, but they've not had, they were fan owned for a while, you know, and they've grafted their way up, but they kept going. The gaffer, the stuff, you know, the stuff supported the manager through thick and thin. They made as much money available as possible. They give the best facilities and infrastructure you possibly can give. And we're constantly looking at that. Where have we not gained that percent that we wanted to gain, and how are we going to do it next season or in the last 4 or 5 months of this one? You know what I mean? And that really is, for me, how it plays out. There's no coincidence, and there are very few flukes, in my opinion, as to where people end up. And the table never lies.
No.
You know, and that's the truth.
No, absolutely. You're absolutely right. It's you know, football is all about a good plan for a club, and sometimes there's bumps in the road, and I'm going through that at the moment, and it's quite easily, you know, it's the ones who hold their cool or suddenly panic when they hit a bump in the road, and that's when clubs can end up in a fucking disastrous, precarious position.
Yeah, there's so many buttons you can press, and
of course,
pressing them is not always the right thing to do. It's not. It's about you know. I see the players every week, and you know, one thing that gets tabled at playing groups at Bradford is, oh, they're not interested, they don't care, they're not running for us, they don't want to die for the club, and they're not really with us. Well, I really would dispute that. You know, I know this playing group quite well, and they're actually a good set of boys who want to do well, and they're aware that they're carrying a number of years of disappointment, and that brings pressure, and there are certain players that adapt to that better, you know, but they're learning that. You know, it's very simple. You know, I can come out every summer and say, well, we're going to try and stay up. We're going to find mid-table. If you set them standards inside your football club and that's acceptable, you're done. You're absolutely done. If we chase for we will always strive for the best possible outcome every season, and that in itself drives up standards. It's only like any company. You know, if you're the sales department and you put the target at 50k, and you know deep in your heart you can do 75, well, don't set it at 40 then. You know, why would you do that? So it's, but you know, it's about balancing our ambition and the realistic expectations all at the same time. But you know, there's no doubt we're well set, in my opinion. And if we continue on our course and we stick together and we as a whole club, the fans, everything, they'll have their day. You know, I'm determined, and I must admit, the Rochdale game in particular. On Saturday, I left there disappointed for the supporters because I wanted them to have I wanted them to celebrate the Saturday. Yes, it's 3 points in the bag, but it would have been nice for them as well. They made the effort. So,
yeah, no, fair play.
Now, until certainly over the summer last year, you were pretty visible on social media. You know, and took a step back, I think, in the autumn. I just wonder if you could talk a little bit about, you know, kind of why you went in that direction, and you know, does it impact in any way in which you communicate with the fans?
Yeah, I mean, when I took over, you know, a lot of people sort of said to me, "You really probably want to leave that alone," and I said, "Well, no, I think there's still conversation that needs to be had in that way, and that we need to build some trust." And I just felt after a while, you know, you're communicating with quite a small proportion of your supporter base there, and I don't know, and the more I tossed it around in my mind, what is the supporter on social media that's shouting? Largely abuse, if we're honest, most of the time. Why is that person more important than the other person that would happily have a cup of tea or a coffee with you through the week and just discuss their views as well. And as long as, from my point of view, I've never turned the fans forum down. We do 2 or 3 every year, some here, some away. Things like this, I'm always open to. I don't think I've ever said no to an interview on a radio or anything like that. As long as I am open and honest and communicating throughout, I don't think that is benefiting the football club, me being plonked on there every game. And it's all the time. And it almost felt that sometimes that supporters would wait for almost my verdict on a match, and I think that's wrong of me, to be discussing it in that way. And I'm not prepared to work match by match either. I'm trying to take a more holistic view on the position of the football club, and whatnot. But in no way is that me hiding from anything or anything like that. I mean, one thing I would say is, it does affect your focus at times. You know what I mean? Like, I've got a job to do here, but it's a difficult job, and I need to focus on what's important, not, sit with my social media page up on the right-hand side every day waiting for the next line of information. And every supporter knows that they can contact me, emails. I don't think I've ever not replied to someone's letter. I'm always very reachable in that regard. So I don't think it's affected much from my point of view. But it's probably better from a mental perspective. It provides a little bit more clarity. It gives you a little bit more space to make your own judgments, because ultimately I'm the one who gets paid to make them.
Great comment.
Yeah, Darragh talks a lot about, especially when times are difficult, that it can be not a nice place. And we've talked about it on the show, I think, over the last couple of weeks as well.
Well, I actually think it's worse than that. I think it's turning into a place where it won't be many years down the line, I can assure you, where doctors and the NHS are putting adverts out about it as a new tobacco and an alcohol. I'm serious. It's coming down the line where, I don't really, I don't suffer with mental health issues, but I know some people that do, and I think that world would affect them massively if they sort of made themselves available in that way, or they were able to almost give themselves that level of vulnerability. And I do think that it is an issue coming down the line, because it can be wonderful, and you hear about things where people have met family members that they didn't know and all that kind of stuff. That's wonderful, but the other side of it can be quite bad, really. I think
very toxic. I
think so, and I don't think it's a true representation of general opinion. It is a bit of an echo chamber at times, and when you're winning it's quiet, and when you're losing it's not, and that in itself makes it not a reliable thing to have, I think, on reflection, and I'm big enough to admit this, it probably does affect you more than you actually think. You don't realize it, but it clouds your mind, when you're driving home from games and you're in the car and you're having to think about what you've seen. That's the time that I need to be thinking about what I've seen, not what me and 50,000, 500 people on Twitter are telling me I've seen. You know what I mean?
100%.
Just my view on it, and everyone's got their own opinion.
Good view. You're not wrong.
You live and learn. And I just think, I'm happy to chat, but I'd like to chat in a more fair and controlled manner. So.
Darragh, any last questions or comments for Ryan today?
No, I you know what, Ryan's doing an amazing job as usual, and I hope you have a great second half of the season and win that promotion your work deserves. And we speak to you again in the summer.
Yes, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Cheers, guys.
No worries, Ryan.
Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, boys. I'll go back to my striker finding job.
That's going to be our just log on to Football Manager and there'll be just a transfer list. You're going to find a nice list that you can go to, and we'll be announcing it tomorrow, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. So.
Appreciate your time, and for everybody listening, if you've got questions, please feel free to send them in. contact@hardtruthfootball.com. That's contact@hardtruthfootball.com. Until next time, we'll see you again soon.
Take care, everyone.